What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Good evening to everybody. Apologies to all the East Coast dads for going live at 10 p.m. Eastern here on this Monday night. But welcome back to the Home Run Hitters podcast, the Home Run Hitters show, presented by Sports Time HQ. Whether you're watching on YouTube, on Periscope, on Twitter right now, or even on Twitch, thank you for joining me tonight. I am one of your co-hosts, Andrew Quinn. You can follow me on Twitter at AQuinnFF. My other co-host, Chuck, he was unable to be here tonight. He's feeling a little bit under the weather. So, Chuck, we're thinking about you. We're hoping that you get to feeling better quickly so that you can jump back on here with us. And I'm going to just start with, where I've been. So I've had, a couple of weeks off from being on the show. Went to the Cincinnati Reds St. Louis Cardinals game in Cincinnati 2 weekends ago with a good buddy of mine. Unfortunately, the Cardinals lost 4-1 in that game, but I did get to see Adam Wainwright throw. I got to see Yadier Molina catch. I got to see Albert Pujols hit. So as a lifelong Cardinals fan, obviously it was a great experience for me, even though we did lose. And then had a death in the family last week. So that's why I haven't been around. But I'm really excited to be back with you guys to talk shop, talk baseball, and talk fantasy baseball as well. There's been a lot of interesting stuff that's been going on in the past couple of weeks since myself and Chuck have been able to go live with you all. And we're going to kind of start with the dynasty take, one of my favorite prospects in all of baseball. I believe he's actually currently rated as the number 2 prospect in all of baseball, and that's Baltimore Orioles prospect Adley Rushman. Rushman is a switch-hitting catcher with some pop. He's somebody who was competing, honestly, for a spot in the big leagues going into spring training this year. He is 24 years old, so he is one of the older guys on the MLB top 100 prospects list. But Rushman had some tricep issues that kind of jumped up later in the spring, and he's been kind of dealing with those the past couple of weeks as as baseball has been being played. But he just recently started his rehab assignment. He's currently in high A ball. So hoping for the best for Adley. He's a guy that, in terms of just my dynasty teams, I'd love to see him get into the big leagues here soon, just because I need some help at the catcher position. But for those of you in season-long leagues, if he's available on your waiver wire, he's healthy enough to start his rehab assignment. So now might be a good time to jump in there and see if he's available, see if he's worth a pickup. Throwing the Adley news out the window, though, the plan for tonight is a quick-hitting show. Obviously, it's already a little bit late for the East Coast guys. For those of you on the West Coast, I'm probably catching you right after dinner time. But there's not a ton of major news to talk about from the MLB within the past couple of weeks. And again, it's a long season, so I'm not super worried about where the standings are or some of the struggles that some teams are going through right now. Case in point, the Cincinnati Reds, they had an 11-game losing streak that they snapped on the Sunday 2 weeks ago that I went to go watch them play. I mean, they've just been so unlucky with injuries this year. Case in point, Jonathan India, Michael Lodolo, 2 of their top young players. Lodolo recently was called up to the big leagues a couple of weeks ago, and he's really been thriving. And obviously Jonathan India, Rookie of the Year last year. Both of those guys are on the injured list right now. Jonathan India's injury looks a little bit more serious, just due to the nature of it being a rehab of an injury from 2 weeks ago that he had sustained on his right hamstring. And hamstring injuries are not good news for baseball players. Typically, as a former collegiate player myself, I had a hamstring injury when I was a junior, and it set me back quite a bit. I had to rehab for 2 weeks and couldn't even practice during that time. And then when I came back, there was a lot of adjustments to be made. From my perspective as a pitcher, it was a tough and an uphill battle. But India's a middle infielder. He's a hitter. It's crucial for him to literally play with his feet underneath him in every aspect, just like it is for a pitcher. So this is an injury where hopefully, after after coming back maybe a little bit too quickly and rehabbing it. Maybe not the way that he should have. I don't know India. I don't know too much about the injury. I don't know too much about what his work was to get better. But hopefully it's a lesson that he learns after the experience that, hey, I gotta do this the right way. I gotta really take the time to make sure that I'm ready to roll, so that the Reds are a team that they need all of their talent to be successful, and they struggled without him in the lineup, and now they're going to be missing him again for some time. So again, I wish all the best for Jonathan India. I've got him on a couple of dynasty rosters. I've got him in redraft in a couple of places. He's a guy I'm not going to drop because of the injuries, but it definitely is a concern, and hopefully something that doesn't turn into a longer term issue where he has to miss, months of the season. In some other injury news, Jose Altuve was out for a little while. He's activated off the IL. Tonight's his first night back since his injury. Shohei Ohtani, he has a groin injury. It's classified as day-to-day right now. He is saying that he's not expecting to miss a start. He might miss a day or two. He was not in the lineup tonight. Mike Trout was actually in the DH role for the Angels, so they gave him a night off from the field and moved him to the DH. But doesn't seem like it's a super concerning injury for Ohtani, but with him being one of the brightest stars in baseball, anytime that one of those guys has a little tweak here or there, it's something to monitor. Sonny Gray, who Chuck and I kind of hyped in the preseason, is kind of one of our favorite middle to late round targets as a starting pitcher. He went down early in the season with an injury, I believe lower body related as well, but he completed his rehab assignment earlier this week. He's looking on track to be pitching with the Twins here within probably the next week or so. I wouldn't be surprised if he logs a start sometime this week even for them. Mike Clevenger as well, a guy we haven't seen throw in quite some time. Formerly with the Cleveland, now Guardians, but when he was playing with Cleveland, they were the Cleveland Indians. He's on the San Diego Padres now. He's going to be making his first start in, I believe, like a year and a half. It's definitely been over a year since we've seen Clev on the mound. He's making his first start on Tuesday. And Clev is a great, fun pitcher to watch. He's real wiry. He's real jittery. He's moving around a lot. He's a guy that makes hitters uncomfortable, not just with how he pitches, but the stuff he has. He can run a fastball up in the mid to upper 90s. He's got devastating breaking stuff. And he's also got one of the more interesting fashion senses, I guess you could say, in baseball. He likes really the artistic, colorful pop, makes your eyes pop type of stuff. But I'm excited to see Clevenger get back at it. I'm sure he's been itching to go for a while now. And actually, for those of you guys that might have seen earlier, there was a video going around of all the pitchers on the Padres. They were mimicking Yu Darvish when he was walking to the bullpen earlier, and Clevenger was kind of leading the charge there. And just funny because you had no idea until he got all the way out to the bullpen what was going on. So good to see Clevenger back, and hopefully he makes a positive impact, because the Padres, certainly are going to need all the help they can get to get out of that NL West. And they are still currently waiting on Fernando Tatis Jr., who, as you guys remember, fractured a wrist in a motorcycle accident before spring training started. And he is he's progressing through his rehab. I saw that he took simulated ground balls, which I'm not really sure exactly what that means. Like maybe he just had a ball in his glove and was going through the footwork, but he was making throws across the infield. All signs are pointing to, when he's healthy, for him to retake that shortstop role in San Diego. But again, he's probably at least a month and a half out from probably even starting with a minor league rehab stint, just because, let's face it, he's probably not getting to see a ton of live pitching right now. So he's probably going to need at least, 4 or 5 games of seeing some arms that, are not necessarily big league quality to get himself back on track and get back into the Padres lineup. Other than that, Teoscar Hernandez, another big injury, another big fantasy guy. He is beginning his rehab assignment as well. So for those of you who drafted Teoscar, I have him in redraft in a couple of spots. I didn't drop him just because I know when he's healthy, we saw it in glimpses last year and in years prior, he's a potential 30 home run guy, potential 300 hitter, and especially in that Blue Jays lineup, that's going to have a lot of production between him and Bichette and Vladdy. even Matt Chapman from time to time. They've got some big boppers, so you're going to want pieces of that offense. But Teoscar Hernandez is trending towards returning here within the next week and a half as well. Outside of that, those are the big injury bits and pieces. The main kind of story going around baseball really within the last week, there's two big things, and I'll get into probably the more noteworthy one right now. For those of you who didn't see, Trevor Bauer was suspended for a total of essentially 2 seasons. I believe it was 324 games, which would be exactly 162 times 2, which is 2 seasons. I'm not going to get into the details of what happened with Trevor Bauer. That's not for me to discuss, because whatever knowledge is out there that I have access to, you have access to as well. Looking at the fact of the matter, Trevor Bauer is extremely vocal. He has expressed his dismay and distrust with Rob Manfred, most notably for how he handled the Houston Astros cheating scandal from a few years back. He's vocal on Twitter, on social media, likes to create a brand for himself. He's a guy who reminds me of teammates that I used to play for, that when a guy's on your team, you love him, right? But when he's on the other team, he's probably the guy you hate more than anybody else. And personally, I'm a fan of Trevor Bauer. I like what he has done to grow the game over the past couple of years, to make a name for himself, to make a brand for himself. He collaborates with guys like Eric Sim, who's a phenomenal social media guy, and does great things for baseball. Posts videos of himself lifting and his journey to throwing 100 miles an hour, and his pop times and exit velocities. I mean, all cool stuff, right? If you're a young kid looking to get into baseball and you want to see dudes, crushing stuff, Eric Sim's the type of guy for you to follow. And Trevor Bauer has worked with him before. But being in that type of spotlight, Trevor Bauer kind of can draw negative attention too. And sometimes he does it to himself. He'll quote tweet somebody who says something, oh, Mickey Mouse Cy Young Award winner because he won the Cy Young in 2020, which was only a 60-game season. But again, my argument as a pitcher is he was the best pitcher in baseball during that 60-game stretch. And who cares if it's 60 games? If you're the best pitcher, you deserve to be awarded as the best pitcher, which he was. The guy signed, multi-million-dollar contracts, now in Los Angeles. And he's posted, his side of the story on social media. If you want to check it out, you can go onto his Twitter page, where he's posted, kind of notes apps and screenshots of different text messages with this alleged person that he's having this dispute with. And the thing that kind of upsets me the most about the whole situation is that I think Rob Manfred really, really screwed up by leveraging such a harsh punishment on this guy. Case in point, we see guys like Roberto Osuna with the Houston Astros a couple of years ago, one of their closers, their closer, one of the premier closers in all baseball at the time, who had a domestic abuse case. And he was supposed to be blackballed by managers, blackballed by front offices, not offered money to sign as a free agent, suspended for, months, if not a whole season. I don't recall the exact amount of time Osuna was suspended for. Somebody in the comments might know and might be able to throw it on there. But Roberto Osuna is in baseball still. Roberto Osuna is pitching in baseball. He might even have pitched today, for all we know. It's just sad. And speaking of the Houston Astros, again, the only punishment that we really saw get sent out to Houston was they had to fire their coach. He was suspended for a full season, I believe. And Houston just said, okay, we're going to just move on because we're going to need to bring an interim guy in anyways. We might as well might as well find a new coach. And yet there's been no punishments on any of the front office, any of the players that were associated with that, nothing. 100 years ago, there's an infamous scandal that took place during a World Series involving gambling. The Black Sox scandal. For those of you that are unfamiliar with the Black Sox scandal, there were numerous players on the Chicago White Sox who nicknamed themselves the Black Sox at the time because they had a cheapskate owner who wouldn't even do the laundry for the team. So they were wearing these dirty uniforms and they were getting paid unfair wages. Again, this is a World Series team, a team that's competing for the World Series, and they finally get to the World Series. And a couple of the players on the team are, approached by essentially mobsters, gangsters, guys that are, associated with essentially criminal enterprises, criminal organizations. And they get offered, a lot more money than what they were currently making to throw the World Series. One of the players involved in the scandal was Shoeless Joe Jackson, who supposedly was aware of the situation, accepted money at the front end, but then decided, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to blow the series. I'm going to play hard and return the money before the World Series ended that he was paid to throw the series and just played as hard as he could. A guy who was guilty by association, but was not guilty of a crime per se, or the crime like the rest of his team. And he was, blackballed from baseball. He's not in the Hall of Fame. He's got Hall of Fame statistics. I'm not saying Trevor Bauer is a Hall of Famer and that he should get special treatment because he's won the Cy Young. I'm not saying any of that. If Trevor Bauer, did what is being claimed by his accuser, if what has been somewhat dismissed and passed over in court, if what everyone is assuming and is saying is true is bad or is what happened, then yeah, Trevor Bauer is a terrible person and a bad human and doesn't deserve to be associated with Major League Baseball anymore. But he's had no criminal charges that have been charged. Like, he hasn't been charged with anything. The court's been dismissed. Maybe he paid the people off. I don't know, right? But he hasn't been criminally charged with anything, and yet Rob Manfred has decided we're going to punish this guy basically more than we've ever punished any player before, with the, exception of like a Barry Bonds, who's not going to be in the Hall of Fame, which is an atrocious decision by the baseball writers and everyone associated with the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. Barry Bonds deserves to be in the Hall of Fame because whether you like it or not, he is the greatest baseball player of all time, statistically speaking. And he's probably a Hall of Famer before he even took steroids, was a 400 home run, 400 steal guy. But all of that aside, Alex Rodriguez, probably never going to be in the Hall of Fame. Roger Clemens, never going to be in the Hall of Fame. Baseball should glorify the guys that participated in the steroid era. And like, in my opinion, if I was in charge of the Baseball Hall of Fame, I'd build a whole separate wing just for the steroid era. And so what if you don't want, Mark McGwire, right? You don't want to put Mark McGwire in the Hall of Fame. Like, yeah, Mark McGwire would not have been a home run without, or a Hall of Famer without steroids. He hit a ton of home runs after taking steroids, hit 70 home runs, I believe, in 1998, which at the time was the all-time record for one season. Okay. Does he deserve to be in the Hall of Fame? No, I'm not arguing for that, but he should still be celebrated. His accomplishments should be celebrated. I don't care if you take steroids or not. If I took steroids, I'm not hitting 70 home runs in 162 games. I'm not talented enough to do that. Anyone who thinks that steroids help those players become exactly who they are is crazy, right? Does it help with certain things? For sure. Does it help with recovery? Does it help with strength? Yeah, absolutely. Does it help with muscle building? Yeah, absolutely. Bat speed? For sure. Steroids don't help you barrel up 97. They don't help your hand-eye coordination, right? So the way that baseball has stripped certain players of their accomplishments, and now it's a shame to see that this is happening to Trevor Bauer. Again, if he did what he's being accused of, yeah, he's a terrible person, does not deserve to be associated with baseball at all, okay? But if he didn't do the things that he's being accused of, and this was all just for clout and, whatever, right, then shame on you, Rob Manfred, for suspending him for 2 seasons when the guy hasn't been literally hasn't been like found guilty of anything criminally yet. That's just my 2 cents on the situation. Again, if you disagree with me, I'm more than open to having a discussion about this. But that's just the way I see it as a baseball fan. I think it's bad for the game. It's terrible for the Dodgers. It's terrible for Bauer. This is something he might not ever, rise above. He might not ever overcome. This is going to be cemented to him. This is going to be part of his reputation and his legacy forever. And that's, especially if it's not true and all of this is BS, then yeah, that's not fair to him at all. So, all right. I said that was the first main news point, right? So now I'm going to talk about the second thing that happened with baseball this week. So at the beginning of the season, MLB rosters were expanded to 28 players. Today was the deadline for teams to shrink those rosters from 28 to 26 players. And so that leaves teams with basically 2 options, right? You can either carry 14 pitchers and 12 position players. Obviously, if you're a team like the Angels and you have literally 2 two-way players in Shohei Ohtani and Michael Lorenzen, you can be a little bit more liberal with those decisions, but most teams don't have that luxury. I'll give you an example. The New York Mets made a pretty surprising because of the player, but not surprising because of the production or lack thereof so far. But the Mets made a surprising move today when they had to trim their roster down by designating Robinson Cano for assignment. Cano obviously has been around the league for what feels like almost 2 decades. Started with the Yankees, signed a big contract in Seattle, played with the Mariners for multiple years, and now he is in the Big Apple again, but with the Mets. But he's not going to be in the Big Apple anymore. And my opinion is, from a fantasy perspective, is Robinson Cano is droppable in all formats, dynasty, redraft. If you even had him on your team for the name or because you liked him 10 years ago, just cut ties with them, because a older player like this getting designated for assignment typically spells that the end is near for them. Miguel Cabrera, right? Miguel Cabrera is in Detroit, finally got his 3,000th hit about 2 weeks ago, which awesome for Miggy. He's a great player. He deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, deserves all the fame and recognition that he's been getting. If Miguel Cabrera got sent down to AAA tomorrow, you're probably not seeing him back in Detroit unless there's like a huge outcry from fans and the team really struggles and they want to get more people in the ballpark, because they've got Spencer Torkelson now, who is more than capable of playing first base and hitting in the middle of the lineup for them for years to come. Albert Pujols with the Cardinals, right? If he got sent down to AAA, that's it. These veteran, I'm not talking about a guy that's like 30 and he's having a bad month, relief pitcher, and they send him down to tune things up. We're talking about a guy who's basically at the end of his line, right? Robinson Cano. No one would be surprised if he retired at the end of the season. I wouldn't have been surprised if he retired at the end of last season. But Cano has been designated for assignment. He's one of about 70 players that have been optioned down to AAA or lower, all within the past 24 to 48 hours by their professional teams because of the trimming situation. On the bright side, for a couple of teams, there have been a couple of exciting players that have moved up, though, as a result, with some teams deciding to send some guys down and call some guys up. The main guy I want to talk about is Jose Miranda, who is kind of a utility infielder with the Minnesota Twins, but he is one of baseball's top 100 prospects. He's currently rated as the 93rd prospect in all of baseball. He's a 2016 draft pick. He has been all the way up to AA within the past couple of years and was in AAA at the beginning of this season. He's a guy that isn't going to necessarily impress with like his power or even necessarily his his defensive acumen, but he is a great contact hitter. Last year, he did have one of the best offensive seasons in all of the minor leagues. He did have a 973 OPS between AA and AAA last year, which is pretty good. At the big league level, if you're sporting that type of an OPS, you're probably an all-star caliber player, and you might even find yourself in the MVP discussion. An OPS, by the way, for those of you who might not be as savvy with statistics, is on base plus slugging. So your on base percentage is out of every plate appearance you have, what rate are you reaching base safely? Typically via a walk, a hit by pitch, or a hit, obviously. And then your slugging percentage is how many bases you average per at bat. So if you hit a single, your slugging percentage is 1,000. If you hit a double, it's 2,000. If you hit a home run, it's 4,000, etc. So typically you'll see, the average big leaguer with an OPS between like 750 and 800. The higher end sluggers like Juan Soto, Shohei Ohtani last year, those guys are typically in the 1,000 OPS range. So for Miranda to be at 973 last year, granted in the minor leagues, is still very impressive. He's a guy though that again, the Twins are just looking better and better as the season goes on. He's a guy, Miranda's a guy who I expect to plug into kind of a utility infielder role. Might not be starting every single game right away, but he's going to be a good add for Minnesota. If you guys are noticing, I got my St. Louis Cardinals Lumberland mug, enjoying some refreshments out of. But yeah, with the roster trimming, that certainly has affected a couple different teams. Obviously, the Mets with Robinson Cano being sent down. Just looking through here, obviously there's been 70 plus guys that have been moved. So let's see if there's anyone else that was notable on here. The Dodgers designated Carson Fulmer for assignment today. They optioned down Zach McKinstry to Oklahoma City. So those are a couple guys for you Dodgers fans that are down. The Twins, again, calling up Jose Miranda, partially due to placing two position players, Miguel Sano and Kyle Garlick, on the 10-day IL, respectively. And Kyle Garlick is a big loss for them because within the past week, he's been one of the top performers in all of baseball as well as in fantasy baseball. So that's going to be a big loss for them. But again, getting some great relief with Jose Miranda, who's Minnesota's number 3 prospect overall. Justice Sheffield with the Mariners has been optioned down to AAA. Obviously, like we said, the Mets designating Robinson Cano for assignment. Let's see who else. Red Sox optioned Jalen Davis down to AAA. Jalen Davis, who they had claimed off waivers from San Francisco earlier last week. He's a promising young outfielder, just hasn't really gotten a ton of opportunity at the big league level yet. But he's been optioned down to AAA as well. So those are some of the big news and notes from around the league. In terms of kind of where we are at so far this season, just kind of looking at some of the top performers, the top teams so far this year. Who are some big surprises to me? I would say number one, we've talked about it at length, obviously, with Chuck being a Yankees fan. The Yankees are currently in first place in the AL East. They're 17-6. They've won 10 games in a row. So basically the Yankees are probably going to start losing again because it seems like they've played extremely well ever since Chuck and I stopped jumping on the podcast. So Chuck, I apologize. I'm probably going to ruin the Yankees winning streak just by being on here. But that's great to see. And again, they're a team that has been pretty lucky so far this year in terms of not having to deal with injuries. So props to the Yankees. Again, 10-0 over their last 10 is an extremely hot start. And then you got the Blue Jays at 15-9 that are still right behind them, only 2.5 games back. But just, when you got a 10-0 team in your division, it's hard to keep up, especially early on in the season when you haven't played a ton of games yet. In the AL Central, the Twins are 9-1 over their last 10. They're currently at 14-9 with a 3.5 game lead over the Cleveland Guardians. So the Twins look like they're going to be in a solid spot. The White Sox are at 9-13. Again, kind of a surprise, but another team that's been unlucky with injuries. Eloy Jimenez is slated to probably miss at least a month or two still after rupturing his hamstring and getting surgery to repair that. Although Dylan Cease, one of their starting pitchers, is looking like he might be a legit AL Cy Young candidate. So there is some exciting potential if you are a White Sox fan. And, again, it's still early in the season. When you start getting some of those guys back and healthy again, you're probably going to be in a much better spot from an offensive standpoint as well as just from a wins and losses standpoint. In the AL West, the Angels, again, Chuck and I talked about them the other week as being a team that was, kind of started off slow out of their first game or two, but is now really, really thriving. They're 7-3 over their last 10. They're 15-9. And one of the things that stands out to me is they're 8-5 at home, which isn't, it's a good record. It's a winning record, but it's not a great record by any stretch of the imagination. But they're 7-4 on the road, which is really impressive early on in the season. And again, 7-3 over their last 10 games. They're up 2 games on the Mariners and the Angels again at 15-9. Moving over to the NL, the Mets, off to a great start. They're 9-4 on the road, 7-3 at home. They're 7-3 over their last 10. They're 16-7, which is 3.5 games better than the surprise as the number 2 team in the NL East, which is currently the Miami Marlins at 12-10. The Phillies at 11-12. The Phillies and Mets were playing against each other this past weekend. We actually saw Schwarber hit 2 home runs and get thrown at today. And Buck Showalter has been suspended for a game and a couple. I think the pitcher, I can't remember the pitcher, but the pitcher got suspended for 3 games for throwing at Kyle Schwarber. But the Phillies are 11-12. They're going to turn things around. They'll get hot. They'll score a bunch of runs still. So they're, great for fantasy. And then the Atlanta Braves at 10-13, a little bit of a surprise to see them down there. Have struggled a little bit, only 6-7 at home. They've gone 4-6 over their last 10 games, so hopefully they'll be turning things around. In the NL Central, I called it the last time that Chuck and I were on here that the Cardinals were not going to be in first place in the NL Central. They are not in first place, partially due to the Arizona Diamondbacks coming into town and sticking it to us in a couple of games this past weekend. But the Milwaukee Brewers are 7-3 over their last 10, are 15-8 overall. Corbin Burns has refound his stride on the mound. And with their pitching being as competitive as it is, the Brewers are probably going to continue to build on the momentum that they have right now. And they're 8-4 on the road, which is great, especially after they started out, I think, 1-2 in Chicago. So 8-4 on the road means they've been playing really good baseball, whether they're at home or away. The Pirates at 9-13, they are staying afloat so far in the Central too. Brian Reynolds, Ke'Bryan Hayes, 2 solid players that they have. The pitching hasn't been as bad as we thought it would be. They are 4-6 over their last 10 games, but again, they're 5.5 games back of the Brewers, which might look a little bit daunting, but this Pirates team, no one was expecting them to be competitive this year, and here they are, only 4 games under 500, almost 25 games into the season. And then moving over to the West, we have 2 teams, the only division right now with a tie atop its division. The Padres and the Dodgers are both tied. Dodgers at 14-7, Padres at 15-8. So the Padres do have 2 more games than the Dodgers. The Dodgers are 8-2 at home, but they're 6-4 over their last 10, where the Padres are 7-3 over their last 10. Real quick, because I've been seeing a couple of people ask questions about this guy for fantasy. They're a little bit worried about him. Justin Turner, third baseman of the Los Angeles Dodgers, great player, has been a solid player really for the last 5 years for fantasy purposes. He's really been struggling offensively. He's been batting under 200 since the end of the regular season last year. So playoffs, World Series, all of that included, as well as the beginning of this season, he's batting under 200 in that span. People asking, is Justin Turner a guy I should be dropping? Is he a guy that I should be moving on from completely? What should I do with him? My answer is, if you need a corner infielder, if you need a utility guy, go and trade for Justin Turner right now. I think that, especially at this point in the season, with some guys that we know are going to produce, some guys that have produced in the past, are parts of good offenses, are parts of good team structures, and are going to get, pretty much everyday playing time, especially plate appearances, even in a DH role. These are guys that we want to target. These are guys we want to go after in trades, especially when they're slumping. That's the best time to get them because you can get them at value. Case in point, I had Kyle Tucker almost everywhere I could this year for redraft purposes. And when Kyle Tucker was slumping 2 weeks ago, I had like 3 or 4 different league mates hit me up with trade offers. Hey, what do you want for Kyle Tucker? I'll give you, I don't know. I'll give you Andrew McCutchen and Kybert Ruiz for Kyle Tucker, right? I'm not going to give you Kyle Tucker, a first, second round draft pick, for 2 guys that played well after 10 games, right? Kyle Tucker's turned things around, and he's a guy that if you drafted him that early, then you're counting on him to produce, right? Another example is I saw somebody post on the Fantasy Baseball Reddit page earlier today, hey, I have Matt Olson on my team, and I'm thinking about benching him because he has a doubleheader against the Mets tomorrow, and I don't want him to go 0 for 8. You're not drafting Matt Olson so you can bench him on a doubleheader against the Mets. You're drafting Matt Olson because he has that potential, that ceiling to give you a 3 home run day with 8 RBIs. Right? Kyle Tucker has the potential for my fantasy teams to hit a home run, to hit 2 doubles, to score 3 runs, and to steal 3 bases. You know what I mean? That's why I drafted Kyle Tucker, is because he fills up every stat sheet for you. Justin Turner still has a potential to hit 30 home runs this year. Justin Turner has the potential to drive in 110 RBI, 110 runners. He has the potential to score 80-plus runs. He has the potential to hit the ball at a 280 clip. And if he's struggling now and he finishes the season at 280, he's going to be a 300-plus hitter from today until the season ends. That's just how the math works. So could trading for Justin Turner burn you? Yeah, sure. But, what do you have to give up right now to get a Justin Turner? If I am a fantasy manager, which I am, obviously, and I need a third baseman, okay? Let's say that I have, I don't know, let's say that I have Manny Machado, but, I'm looking to maybe downgrade from a talent perspective at third base and upgrade at another position, right? You give up a little bit more at one position and you get back a little bit more at another position, right? So here's an example of a trade that I would be looking to do. Okay, if I have Manny Machado, or throw in another player that's performing really well right now, CJ Cron. CJ Cron's a great example. I have a lot of people that have been telling me, you need to hang on to CJ Cron. He could hit 40 home runs this year. I don't buy the hype. CJ Cron's a guy where if I can sell him and get a good return on him right now in redraft and dynasty, I'm going to do it. Right? Let's say that you've got a CJ Cron and Adam Wainwright, okay, who's a quality pitcher but hasn't been performing super well right now, and you maybe want to upgrade a starting pitcher slot, okay? I might take CJ Cron and Adam Wainwright, and I might go to the Walker Buehler manager. And maybe he's a Dodgers fan. He's got Walker Buehler and Justin Turner. And maybe this trade won't work if he's a Dodgers fan, but let's say you've got a manager with a Walker Buehler and a Justin Turner, or a Shane Bieber and a Justin Turner, or pick your pitcher who is a Dylan Cease, right? Lucas Giolito. Go to that manager and say, hey, I want to give you an upgrade offensively with the guy who's going to play for you every single day. I'll give you CJ Cron. You give me Justin Turner. That's fair, right? Because you're getting a much better producer right now. But then I'm also going to give you an ace, and you give me your ace back. So you're downgrading with the ace, but you're still getting a solid pitcher, and you're giving me a guy who is probably going to be a consistently better performer. But to some guys, that's a trade they're going to be willing to take. Now, again, could that hurt you in the long run? Sure. Justin Turner could continue to hit the ball at an under 200 clip, and CJ Cron could go on to hit 45 home runs this year in Colorado. I don't know. Adam Wainwright could return to, all-star form, and Walker Buehler could flame out or get injured, and then you're screwed. But that's the risk you got to take, right? Playing safe doesn't win you championships. Playing safe in fantasy football does not win you championships. In fantasy baseball, it certainly doesn't either. You draft for upside and you trade for upside. And if you get burned, you get burned. You only have, if you're in a 12-team league, you have less than a 10% chance of winning your league. That's just the facts. So you've got to be bold and make bold decisions, make bold moves, especially when you see a guy who is struggling, who has a long history of production. So Justin Turner's a guy that I'm targeting in trades right now. I told you guys a couple weeks ago, pick up Odubel Herrera because he's basically going to be retaking the center fielder's role in Philadelphia. He has been. He's hit a couple home runs. He's stolen a couple of bases. He's a guy that if he's on your free agent waiver wire right now, he's someone I'd be looking to pick up immediately. I'm going to quickly run through a couple of my favorite free agent ads at the moment. Number one for me, if he's still available in your league, according to Yahoo, he's only rostered in 25% of leagues right now. That's Ha-Seong Kim. He is currently, over the last week, 7 for 19 with an OPS of 1,242. Over that span, he has 5 runs scored, 2 home runs, and 7 RBIs. He's only rostered in 1 out of every 4 fantasy leagues, and he's position eligible at second base, third base, and shortstop. If he is available in your league, he is a guy that you need to add. You could basically throw him into whichever starting spot you want to. And he's a young guy. He's only 26 years old. He'll be turning 27 in October. He hit 8 home runs last year, had 54 hits, hit 202 with a 270 on base percentage. So we're seeing him certainly improve upon his statistics from last year. And he stole 6 bases last year. He's already got 1 this year. So if you're in a league that, is head-to-head scoring and you need a guy that's going to steal a base for you, once or twice a week, I would go after Kim. Another guy who's been hot, who I'm not necessarily jumping to add, but if you're in a pinch and you need somebody who's going to play every day, is Nick Ahmed. He's got 3 solo home runs in the last 7 days. He does bat towards the bottom of an Arizona Diamondbacks offense that doesn't score a lot, so he's probably only going to get you 3, maybe 4 plate appearances every day. And he's more known for his defensive acumen. I believe he was like a 220, 230 hitter last year. But he's hot right now, and when a guy's hot, ride it out for as long as you can. So if you need a guy who's shortstop eligible, he might even be outfield eligible in a couple of spots. Go ahead and try to pick up Nick Ahmed. A Cincinnati Red who has been playing well over the past couple of weeks and who will continue to get consistent playing time with Jonathan India's injury is Brandon Drury. He's only rostered in 2% of fantasy baseball leagues on Yahoo over the last week. He has 6 hits and 18 at-bats, 5 runs scored, 2 home runs, 3 RBIs, with an OPS of 1,146. And he is another guy like Ha-Seong Kim, who is position eligible in multiple places, second base, third base, and outfield. And then dynasty-wise, and even in redraft, here's my kind of dark horse guy to go after. And in dynasty, if you're in a sharp dynasty league, this guy's probably not available, but if you're in a dynasty league that most guys are in a win now window and they don't really add a ton of minor league players, they wait for them to get called up. Here's a guy like Adley Rushman that you can jump ahead of some other leagues, teams in your league from the waiver wire and get a guy who, potentially has rookie of the year potential when he gets called up. And that's Nolan Gorman, AAA ball player in the St. Louis Cardinals organization. He's currently on the Memphis Redbirds. And I'm not just bringing up Gorman because he is in the St. Louis Cardinals organization. I'm bringing up Nolan Gorman for a couple of reasons. Number one, Nolan Gorman, get this, ready for this, has the most home runs, or is tied for the most home runs in all of professional baseball right now. He has 11 home runs so far in his stint in the minor leagues this season with the Memphis Redbirds. Gorman is a third baseman. He is only 21 years young. He is your prototypical, size for a power hitter. He's not super big, but he's 6'1", 210. So he does have that size that you look for in a power hitter. He's got 11 home runs already, like we said, and only 78 at-bats. He's played in 20 games, and he's got 11 home runs. So he's almost averaging a home run every other game. The one thing that is concerning, I will admit, is he has 30 strikeouts in 78 at-bats, only 6 walks. So he is striking out upwards of 30% of his plate appearances, which is not great from a fantasy perspective. And frankly, it's not great from even just like a baseball perspective. Is it awesome that he's hitting all these home runs? For sure. Are people going to pay money? Is he going to get a ton of money if he hits 40 home runs as a rookie? I mean, Pete Alonso, case in point. But the strikeouts are not good from a team perspective because he needs to show that he's willing to adjust and do what he needs to do to drive guys in. If, he's got a runner on third with less than 2 outs, looking for a deep fly ball is great. But if you're swinging to put the ball out of the yard and you're going to strike out a lot, then, if you're striking out with a runner on third and less than 2 outs, that's bad baseball. All you needs to do is put a ball in play, hit a hard ground ball somewhere, hit a deep fly ball, and you get a run home. But, he is getting on base at a 372 clip. His OPS, on base plus slugging, is 1,141. And that's over the course of the season. 11 home runs, 2 doubles, 25 hits. So if you take away that 13, that's 12 singles. I'm excited for Gorman. He's a top 40 prospect in all of baseball. He did train this offseason with the former teammate of mine, Trey Hannum, who is a phenomenal hitting guy. He's on Twitter. He's on Instagram. He was a former hitting coach with the New York Mets organization for a year or two. But Trey works with a lot of really promising prospects, and Nolan Gorman's one of them. And it's awesome to see that Gorman has made tremendous strides from an offensive production standpoint. But again, the strikeout numbers are concerning to me. He struck out 152 times in 2019 in 125 games. In 2021, in 119 games, he struck out 115 times. He's already trending towards striking out more than once a game. So this is stuff that's not going to keep him in the big leagues for very long, if and when he does get called up. But the power potential is awesome. The changing his swing this offseason and improving his technique, it's clearly paying off. He's a guy that if and when he does burst into the scene at the big league level, he is going to have that potential to hit 30 home runs right away as a rookie. So if you're in Dynasty and Nolan Gorman is on your free agent wire, I mean, what is he doing there? He's a top 50 prospect in all of baseball. Go ahead and just throw him on a bench slot. But even in redraft, if you are in need of some power, especially like Chuck and I have talked about at a third base position that is a little bit shallow for fantasy purposes this year, then go ahead and grab a Nolan Gorman off of your waiver wire. I'm going to look here on Yahoo just so that I can see what percentage of leagues Nolan Gorman is currently rostered in. I know in Dynasty leagues he's rostered in over 50%, if not more of that. But here we go. Nolan Gorman on Yahoo, he's rostered in 31% of fantasy leagues on Yahoo. So if he's available in your league, now is the time to throw him on your bench and wait and see what happens. And if nothing happens, then in a couple of months, if you need to drop a player and you're unsure what to do and Gorman's still sitting there, then you can drop him. But especially like in a keeper league, if he's available, go ahead and try to pick him up, because if you can keep him for a last round draft pick or keep him for free for next year, that's probably a move that you're going to want to have in your back pocket. Before we wrap it up here, just want to remind you guys that the Home Run Hitters Show and Home Run Hitters Podcast is presented by Sports Time HQ. Shout out to Fernando over there at Sports Time HQ for giving Chuck and I a platform here to chat with you guys and chop it up about fantasy baseball. We're also sponsored by Underdog. Underdog partners with Sports Time HQ and has given us an opportunity to share with you guys a lot of the cool things that they're doing over at Underdog. They've got best ball drafts for fantasy football. Their next Best Ball Mania tournament just opened. The top prize is like over $100,000. I think it might even be $1 million. I'm not 100% sure, but download the Underdog Fantasy app to check it out. If you're depositing for the first time, you use the promo code SportsTimeHQ. It's right up there in the corner. SportsTimeHQ, all one word. If you use that promo code on Underdog, they're going to match your first deposit up to $100. So you deposit $100, Underdog gives you $100. You have $200 to play with. They do have daily props as well. Chuck and I have talked about going over some of our favorite Underdog bets the next time that we're on. So plan on us doing that. Chuck, again, if you're watching, I hope that you're feeling better, buddy. And I'm excited to chop it up with you next week. That's all that I've got. Thank you to everyone at home for listening. Again, East Coast dads, I apologize for being on later. The normal Chuck and I will plan to get back with you guys on Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern. We're going to try to get back to our regular time slot. Again, the world's crazy, man. Stuff happens. I'm sure all of you guys can relate to it. But Chuck and I will be back with you all next Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern to continue talking about some fantasy baseball news as well as some news from around the league. So that's going to do it for me. I'm out of here. Enjoy the rest of your Monday night from all of us over here at Sports Time HQ and the Home Run Hitters Show. My name's Andrew Quinn. Follow me on Twitter at AQuinnFF, and I will catch you guys later.